I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Friday. Today we call our program the Healing Circle, and we'll be joined by colleagues talking about the questions of mental health and healing and how we proceed as community, as families, as individuals to work on healing ourselves, healing our community, and healing the world. I want to begin by, as always, inviting you, no matter which platform you're joining us from, to support this program, this live stream, by becoming a subscriber. How do you do that? Well, like I said, we're on several platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, and I think one more. But no matter how you're LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, but 3 different platforms on Facebook, that's what it is. So no matter how you're connecting, we value your engagement. We want to grow it. But we're really asking people to jump over to the YouTube Insight News MN channel and subscribe there. If you can subscribe there, that would just be awesome. We're north of 600, we're trying to get to 700 and to 1,000. And your subscribing and liking and sharing from there is one of the things that moves us in that direction. So thank you in advance. And, our data shows that about 80% of the people who watch the program are not subscribers. They're watching, but they're not subscribing. We'd like you to help us flip that number around so that 80% of the people that are watching the program are actually subscribers. It doesn't cost anything, and it means you get notification in advance of the programs. So that's what we want to do. We need your help. We're asking for your help. Subscribe. Also, let people know we're live now. Let people know that that we're live, and we'd like for them to be a part of the program as well. Well, yesterday I led a regular monthly meeting of a nonprofit that I'm the board chair of, and as I was heading downtown to the meeting, I listened to Minnesota Public Radio's story on yesterday, April 4th, being the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And, of course, you know it, but you don't think about it as often as you should. But to hear it on the radio brought the memories back of my experience. And I opened my meeting by sharing the fact that today is a day worth taking a second, taking a moment to reflect, to consider. And sort of guided by the Spirit, I said and asked the 50 or so people present at that meeting, did any of you know Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? And of course, as I expected, no one in the room knew him personally. And had any of you seen him personally live, talked to him? Same response, nobody had. And so I said, you know what? I have spoken with him directly one-on-one, and I worked with him. The work I did was as a student. I mentioned then that I was a student at Morehouse College in 1965, my freshman year. And in January of 66, Dr. King led a rally of students from the Atlanta University Center. Morehouse College is part of that, Morehouse, Clark, Morris Brown, and Spelman, and Atlanta University. But Dr. King led and spoke at a rally from the campus and from the community to the Georgia State Legislature in downtown Atlanta to protest the legislature's refusal to seat Julian Bond. And I just remembered and shared both the feeling and the excitement and the importance of the moment of young people. I might have been 18 years old, 17, 18 as a freshman at Morehouse, and but worked out of my dorm, Graves Hall, with my friends saying, we got to go, we got to do this. Why was Julian Bond not seated? First of all, he was not seated because he'd taken a position that SNCC had articulated, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, condemning American participation in the war in Vietnam, condemning the war in Vietnam. And the legislature recognized that Julian Bond was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Commission, was a visible spokesperson for it, and demanded that he renounce the organization and renounce its position on the Vietnam War. ultimately the legislature was saying that there's a patriotism test here, and speech against foreign policy, American foreign policy, they viewed as anti-American. They refused to seat him. As it turned out, later he was elected to the seat. His seat sat vacant. An election was held. He was elected again. They still refused to seat him, but finally he was seated after court action. But in January, when they refused to seat him, we had a rally on campus with community down from the campus to the state capitol, and we heard speaker after speaker demand justice and demand recognition of our rights, demand that we have a voice and our voice can be heard, it must be heard, cannot be silenced. And in that spirit, the memory of being with Dr. King, I told the people yesterday, was special with me. And it wasn't the first time. I thought that was the first time I talked to Dr. King, but another time preceded that. I'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about the Julian Bond. I pulled a clip from that rally. And what's really nice, cool, I guess, is as 75-year-old Al McFarlane kind of walks down memory lane to say to myself and to others, to you, that I was there. I was on the street on this day in January of 1960. Check it out.
Somewhere Julian Bond read, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." So we come because we believe in his integrity. We believe in him as a person. Let me say to you finally, there's been a lot of talk about disloyalty these days. We assemble here today as we have assembled all around this nation to make it clear that we love America. Because we love America, we're going to work right here, even if we have to suffer, even if we have to be abused, even if we have to die. We're going to work for that day when every valley shall be exalted and every mountain and hill shall be made low, when the rough places will be made plain and the crooked places straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Yes, this is our hope, and this is our faith, and we are going to see that day right here in Atlanta, Georgia, when Julian Bond will be back in that state legislature.
What a memory, and what a statement. So let me go back in the archives, and I'm going to read to you a piece that is from January 66. This is a piece from the SNCC Digital Gateway, and it's regarding the Georgia legislature refuses to seat Julian Bond story we're talking about. And it says, when SNCC issued its statement opposing the Vietnam War, members of the Georgia State Legislature pressed newly elected Julian Bond to dissociate himself from SNCC, SNCC. Bond refused, and they voted to bar him from being seated. The refusal of the Georgia legislature to seat Julian Bond sent shockwaves throughout the state and national politics. In light of this grave injustice, Martin Luther King Jr. told the Chicago Defender, the Negro community and the white persons of goodwill will have no alternative but to engage in creative protest. Some civil rights activists saw little point in continuing the civil rights work in the Deep South if a Black elected official like Bond could be denied the right to his position so easily. The article continues. Bill Ware, who had been a volunteer in the Mississippi during the 1964 Freedom Summer, decided to form an ad hoc special committee to re-elect Julian Bond, which eventually grew into SNCC's Atlanta project. The committee received money from SNCC to canvass Bond's district and to Bill's support for his second campaign. Their actions were instrumental in Bond's reelection when he ran again in February. The article goes on to say that despite winning the special election, Georgia legislature once again voted to bar Bond from taking a seat. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, which had promised to take his case, declined, and Bond was represented by Leonard Boudin and Victor Rabinowitz. The case Bond v. Floyd made it to the Supreme Court, and the court declared that the state could not apply loyalty tests, quote unquote loyalty tests, to legislators or undermined their First Amendment protections. Bond knew the case was going well when, after the Georgia Attorney General finished his argument, one of the judges, Justice Byron White, asked him, "Is that all you have? You come all this way and that's all you have?" In a unanimous decision, the three judges ordered the Georgia House of Representatives to seat Julian Bond. Well, awesome. I'll share some more thoughts on that in a second. But the point for me is it makes me reflect on my relationship to history, my relationship to history unfolding. And if you are listening, wherever you are, if you have personal experience with Dr. King, with Julian Bond, with other activities that in your experience are milestones and part of the ongoing pivot towards freedom, towards liberation, towards justice for our people, I want to hear from you. And you can do this simply by dropping a note in our comment section. If you want to be on the program, we can get you on as well. We'd love to hear your voice. Say hi. I'm saying hi to Choose Compassion and to Terry Smith. Thank you, Terry, for watching. If there are others that want to join the conversation, drop an email to cooper@insightnews.com. We'd love to bring you in. The point is that the movement is personal to all of us. All of us have a role to play. All of us are present at one level or another at every turn, at every twist. And we certainly are all impacted by the civil rights struggle, civil rights movement, but we also have to contribute. We have contributed and we must continue to contribute to improving the quality of life, the movement towards freedom for our people. Well, so that was one case, but then I remembered more that this was the second time that I'd actually seen Dr. King in person. And the prior time was when in 1962, as a part of the Kansas City, Missouri NAACP youth group, we with elders attended the 1962 NAACP convention in Atlanta, Georgia. Interesting. And I think that before I went down south into Atlanta on my own, with NAACP leadership with a bus, I think. But one of my great aunts just warned me to be careful how you address white people. So when I got to Atlanta, I felt a certain kind of way, excitement to be there with the NAACP. In 62, I was probably 13, 14 years old. I think I was probably about to become a freshman in high school or finishing my 8th grade year in junior high school. But part of the youngest part of the delegation that went from Kansas City as part of the youth and the delegates that attended the NAACP convention. What was unique about that, a couple of things. One is that we were trained in nonviolent resistance by Roy Wilkins himself. I simply remember sitting in a large room and Wilkins telling us what to do if we were on a picket line and the police or the crowds attacked us, how to fold, how to protect your innards, your guts, and how to deflect sticks, instruments, boots, kicks to your shoulders, to your back, but to protect your stomach and your chest and your kidneys. So that was an instruction. And I also remember at that time that we had, as an organization, attempted to book hotels in downtown Atlanta. Of course, we knew that we wouldn't be accepted in those hotels, and therefore the NAACP mounted a protest with several members delegated to walk a picket line in front of the main hotel in downtown Atlanta. I remember seeing our people walking, but being greeted by counter protests from the American Nazis. People in the jack boots, that's what you call them, a boot, whatever you call those boots they wear, the Nazi uniforms. Of course, Nazis then dressed like highway patrol officers, right? But people with swastikas counter marching against our march. And I don't know that I was marching on the line. I believe I was at the location, but there were Nazis passing out literature, protesting us, supporting the position of the hotel. And there were robed members of Ku Klux Klan on the scene, marching and handing out literature again against us, Black people, in support of the hotel's position of keeping the hotel for white people only, of not providing accommodations for Black people. Dr. King spoke to that rally as well. And I can't remember him actually speaking, but when I did the research, it reminded me that he was one of the speakers addressing that event. Well, I'm going to go forward a little bit more. That's number 2 incident. That was the presaging incident of my interaction with Dr. King in Atlanta in 1962. The second incident I described to you was a protest supporting Julian Bond in his effort to get his seat, to be seated as elected member of the Georgia State Legislature. 65, 66, my freshman year at Morehouse College, I had joined the Navy as a, what they call a 2x6 program in high school. And the idea was you could finish college and maybe apply to an officer program and be considered, but you had to keep going to the rallies not rallies, but the training once a month. And if you defaulted on the training, you'd get sent to active duty. Well, during the course of my freshman year at Morehouse, I kind of had a change of heart. And the change of heart came from being around and being with and being in discussions with members of SNCC and just other young people who were questioning, like I was, the war in Vietnam. But I still had the obligation that I committed myself to a year earlier when I was in high school. As a result, as opposed to coming to my second year at Morehouse the following year, I was ordered to active duty. I reported to active duty. So in 66, I was a uniformed sailor. Coming home from Jacksonville, Florida, when I was stationed in 66, I was on a destroyer, the USS Meredith. I stopped in Atlanta. I was going to stop by campus to see my old buddies, my friends who were sophomores at this time. And I remember as I left Atlanta heading for a plane that would take me to Minnesota, to Worthington, Minnesota, where my family now lived. I saw this one solitary figure standing there, quiet, relaxed, it seemed, with a trench coat draped over his arm, kind of a classic pose of a suited, super clean Black man. That's Dr. King. I should go say hi to him. And then I went through my internal situation, but I'm young, I'm Black, I'm angry, I'm classic angry young Black man. And even though I'm in a uniform, I don't know if I was wearing a uniform that day or not, I might have been in civilian clothing, but even though I'm in the military, I have this feeling about the wrong and the injustice our country has dealt to us as a people, and my commitment to what I can learn and grow into and develop as a worker for freedom and against injustice. And so the second impulse was Dr. King represents the old way. He's talking about peace, turn the other cheek, nonviolence. And at this point, I said, I don't know if that's the answer. The answer may be any means necessary, whatever that entails. And so I hesitated as to whether I should go and say hello to him. My mother's teaching prevailed. Be respectful. Be a decent human being to everybody around you all the time. I went over to say, Dr. King, I'm Al McFarlane. You don't know me, obviously, but as a student, I watched you and I was with you in the protests for Julian Bond. I'm in the Navy now, I'm going home. He listened, he smiled, not just not a real smile, but he looked at me and just, with a warmth. And like a priest, when we finished talking, it might have been 30 seconds or a minute, the feeling that I had from him was that he was saying to me, "Go in peace, my son." It was a blessing, a blessing. So I said, "Thank you." And I walked away knowing that I had done the right thing in going and paying respect to Dr. Martin Luther King, and really overjoyed in my heart that he took the minute to say something to me. I was on my way home to Worthington, Minnesota. He was on his way to his murder, his death in Memphis, Tennessee. That was like April 2nd or April 1st that I saw him. It might have been April 3rd. I can't remember the exact date. But a day later, he was killed in Memphis. So when I reflected on that to the group that I was talking to yesterday, I said, that memory is with me right now, just the words. And I'm honored and blessed that I had a chance to personally talk to Dr. King, that at several occasions in which I worked directly with him, not that he knew me or should know me. I was a kid, but I was committed. But I can tell you that that experience shaped the life I have led since then. And that experience shapes my life today. And that's a commitment to fight injustice, the commitment to seek equity, to seek parity, to seek sovereignty, to seek a sense of self-determination, freedom, liberation for Black people, and a belief that the liberation that we seek, the freedom we seek, is indeed a freedom that will liberate all of humanity. It connects me and connects us to each other all over the world, in every culture. It's a basic and universal bid, feeling, aspiration for fulfillment, completion, how we become in a practice fully self-realized as human beings. Well, good to talk about that. Good to share that with you. And I'm interested in how it sounds to you, what your story is, and what your experiences have been on this journey. Because I think that if you're listening here today, you're part of the journey, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. So send me a note if you have a thought or a concern. We'd love to have you share that concern on this program today. The news clip I shared with you was from WSB TV. It was a news film clip, and it was from the march, as I said, that was held in Atlanta, Georgia on January 14th in 1966. So we're glad to find that archival film. When I was looking for it, though, I started going through other things on and around the NAACP and Dr. King, and there's a wealth of information. So we should figure out ways to get into that. Well, let me continue. And my friend Tanane Hurd is here. Tanane, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for jumping in the program today. What are your thoughts? I'm just sharing what's in my heart right now, but what are your feelings as I'm sharing?
Well, first of all, always an honor to be here. But listening to your story was so powerful to me because it really reflects how a moment in time that we don't know at that moment becomes such a pivotal, like, transcending thing in our lives. So that's what I was hearing when, I heard your story. Like, I was a young kid, but I can only imagine. I felt the impact. So I can only imagine the impact that you must have felt meeting him, tragedy happening, but knowing everything that he taught, being conflicted, and that it was a powerful story. I felt like I had met him as a student. So thank you for sharing that with us, because that has been my experience with people that I have met, that at that moment I didn't know it might have been something in passing, but I didn't realize what an impact that would have on me later.
So I'm sending a note to my producer, Cooper. Cooper, if you get a chance to, can you Google the Worthington Daily Globe, which is the town newspaper in southern Minnesota? My parents moved from Kansas City to Worthington in 1965, I think 66, 65. And when I went to Morehouse, I went there from Kansas City. While I went south, they came north to Minnesota. After the school year, I came back to Minnesota and uh, went to military duty from Minnesota and would come home on leaves from there, right? And as I said, I was leaving Jacksonville, Florida, stopping in Atlanta when I came across and had a chance to meet Dr. King one-on-one. And when the news broke of his assassination, it was just weighty. I mean, it was like a truck falling on me personally, but I think everybody in the country, maybe in the world, felt the pain of that assassin's bullet that day. And I wrote an article, angry letter to the editor at the Worthington Daily Globe. So Cooper, if you get a minute, if you can Google the Worthington Daily Globe for April 4th or April 5th or April 6th, 1968, and there should be an article by me on the assassination of Dr. King. And it was searing, angry, crushed, mostly mad that America had done this. And it was a statement in which I accused the country for what it had done in this situation, but also what it continues to do to Black people. And if we can find that, if Cooper can find it, we'll pull it up and I'll share that with you as well.
May I ask you a question, Brother
Yes.
Al?
Mhm.
When you got that news and knowing and hearing you say that you were already conflicted between the nonviolence and, do what's necessary, how did that shape your mindset after that? Did you go more towards one or the other? How did that affect you?
I still was a student, and I finished up my second year of military active duty and came to Worthington. I went to school at the Worthington Community College from 68. I think I got out of my 2-year active duty in August of 68, and in September of 68, enrolled in the community college in Worthington. After that, I came to the University of Minnesota, where I was a student at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. How did it affect me? I knew that I had a place in the world, a place to do some work and some work to do. That's how it affected me. It made me know that my life had a purpose and had meaning and had some demands placed on it that I had to seek to both discover, understand, and fulfill. And I think it meant that I was willing to do whatever was required to be true to the gift of consciousness. What is consciousness? Awareness that there's something wrong, that what is being presented to us every day is not true, not real. We read the Constitution that talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but yet we see our people individually and collectively consistently denied. And we see the audaciousness with which the lie is delivered day in and day out. What do you mean, Al McFarlane? I mean, when you see how Black people are herded by police, not served by police, but corralled, managed, intimidated, abused by police as police policy and practice. And the thing is, back then, though we knew this was broad and behavior that was across the country, the national media always acted like when an incident happened, it was one cop, one bad cop doing one bad thing. We didn't have a capacity to say, no, that's how they all are all the time. Or if not all of them, that's how many of them are, too many. And most of the time, and the consequence of it is a trauma that our community continues to experience. That trauma is an extension of the original sin of the criminal enterprise, that being the enslavement of our people, the dehumanization of African people, of human beings, right? And the denial of our right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And when we finally succeeded in changing the law of the land by supporting the war against the criminals who seceded from this country with an effort to maintain slavery in the South, even though theoretically we won, we saw what happened after 20 years. Jim Crow emerges and brings a new face to the familiar song, and that is the theft of the labor, the life, and opportunity of African people. So we haven't come, we've come far, but we've not achieved the freedom yet. So how did I feel? I feel that a lot of work had to be done, must be done. I feel that way today. And I feel that the work I'm doing now as a journalist is consistent with that. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when I was reviewing some of the files online, it reminded me that, in 1965, and again, I was a freshman at Morehouse and ran across the activist guys and sisters in the AU Center. And they were always upbeat, energetic. They always had a song in their heart and a song on their lips. And the songs were freedom songs. I'm not going to let Jim Crow turn me around. I ain't going to let nobody turn me around. I'm keeping on marching, heading up to freedom land, right? And at any given moment, a song would break out. And these were work songs or church songs that we modified to fit the moment, the urgency of our bid for freedom, and to support and to steel our conviction, to strengthen our conviction, to stay focused on freedom. And so one of the things that I remembered as I was thinking about that was some of the seniors and juniors at Morehouse telling me that even when the local Black press would not cover the activity of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, the radical, the radical Free Panther organizations, right, and the movement, that they said, we understand that you got relationships with power and with advertisers and with this, that, and the other. But what we're going to do is go to our libraries and use a Mimeo machine. And I had this picture in my mind, remembering these guys would type on these Mimeo machines, take these things to where they'd access at a community library, and hand crank out handbills, and they'd pass them out like a newspaper. Maybe that's why I'm a newspaper man today, is that I saw that we can create our own despite not having the assets and the resources that the so-called mainstream media has. We have our own. And what's the modern iteration of that? Well, the modern iteration, and thank God for it, is the digital world. George Floyd changed the world, right? That sister who had the presence of mind to record, and to not run from, but to record this 20th century lynching. That was a lynching right here in our town, Janani, right in our neighborhood. We saw the evil of this sworn officer as he murdered a Black man. And again, always thank God for the sister, the young child that had the spirit of fearlessness to let her stand there. And because a lot of times, if our people, we've been trained this way, saw something happening, go the other way. Don't get involved. I'm not associated with it. I don't want to be heard by it. I'm not going to speak up. But
Yep.
this sister showed up and spoke up by using her telephone to record this murder and to stream it live worldwide. That's the same as the mimeograph machine back in 1964 and 65. Here we go.
Absolutely.
And so our people now have the tools to connect with each other and tell our story in our own words and out of our own lived experience to each other and to the world. And I tell you, Tanani, we are changing the world as we speak, and we will.
Yes,
and
we
because
will.
we have our hands on the technology, even though there are some pros and cons, it's okay. We are innovative.
It is.
Innovative, and we're using everything. This is by any means necessary. Social media,
Absolutely.
no,
Absolutely. Social
Facebook,
media,
LinkedIn,
Facebook,
tell our story, and we
Yes.
get to define. We must define what is true to us, and we get to critique the lie
Absolutely.
and call the criminal enterprise what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I thought about that, and when I first heard people describing this system we're in as a criminal enterprise, I said, well, it's like they didn't want Julian Bond to get seated because he was describing the criminality, the unfairness, the injustice of our country destroying humans in Vietnam, right? For what? And so I think about that. And so some of us self-censor, and we are afraid to tell our truth because we don't want anybody to think that we're not with the program, or to call us ungrateful or unpatriotic. But Tanani, what do you think the British called the Americans when the Americans decided that they didn't want to be controlled by the British Empire? They called them criminals.
That's what
and they called the founding of this nation a criminal enterprise. Because it broke their law and broke their control. Well, of course, if we step back, we could also say the same thing of the British, another criminal enterprise that was the mastermind of the global slave trade. But we have to be free to tell it the way we see it. That's what I think. I don't know. I'm kind of drifting here. But let me say, if anybody's online here, thank you for being here. Give us your thoughts. If you got a comment, we'd like to hear it. If you want to join the program, we'd love to hear it. Fox Basquiat, thank you for being on the program, for sending your comment on the question. Sister Michelle, Sister Terry, thank you both for being here. And if some of you would like to join the program, we'd love to have your thoughts, your feelings. Tanani, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about how, social media, the most powerful tool in that is where there's always been a look away. You can't look away anymore. Mm-hmm. There is, you can't, you can try, but there is no looking away. And from what we've seen with, just all of the atrocities that have happened to us, if people don't stop looking the other way, and I'm talking about our non-melanated beings, if they don't stop looking the other way, there's going to be more. There's going to be more. We have to somehow figure this out. But I know that from my end, yes, going to keep exposing, going to keep fighting against what when I hear something wrong. You might be saying it to me, but certain things that you say to me, you're saying to my people. Mm-hmm. And I can give you a great example of that. I had someone tell me, they accused me of something and then said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I practice white privilege against you." and let me explain where I'm coming from. I was born in South Africa. Now, this apology goes on to state, I still have concerns, and it's like people really feel free to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I used white privilege. I'm sorry about that." And, I think it would have been, this particular situation would have been a great opportunity for a conversation around healing. And instead, because I took a few days to accept this apology, and the reason why I didn't even respond is because part of this email stated, when George Floyd. And I find that really strange in this time where people will talk about one thing and it's kind of to explain their actions away. Now we immediately talk about George Floyd. When George Floyd was killed, I couldn't understand how that could happen. I said, okay, this is my opportunity to extend an olive branch and let you know that, well, I'm not going to speak on the police brutality of it, but let's talk about the systematic impact where there's not police, but we're working together or we're in a space together. George Floyd said, I can't breathe. And no one listened. The people who were absolutely responsible to listen and believe him did not believe him. And that is a problem. Not only with that atrocious murder, but this is how it trickles in society. This is where that systemic impact, for me, I feel that's where it is. And I can never understand when we're talking about something different, someone will bring up George Floyd. It's like the thing to do now, to bring up George Floyd. He was a person. He was a person in our community that most of us have come in contact with. And so I always find that very disturbing when someone brings that up.
Yeah. Well, let's do this while we're here. But let's go ahead and talk about that, because I think the George Floyd murder is this generation's flashpoint, just as the murder of Dr. King was. I remember that a lot of cities went up in flame in the hours and days after the murder of Dr. King. People were pouring out of their houses in the community and expressing their anger with the fire and demanding change. But they were elevating awareness of the inhumane conditions and the consistent denial of opportunity and progress. Well, on the one hand, the country was saying, these are our principles, but this was not the reality for our people anywhere in the country, pretty much. But they wanted us to be silent about our suffering while they enjoyed the illusion of the good life with Ozzie and Harriet and Father Knows Best and that whole suburban situation that they sought to project as normal and available to everybody. So when George Floyd was killed here, where were you? What happened? Where were you when it happened? Do you remember?
I absolutely remember. I was actually up the street.
So like May 25th was the date.
May 25th, 2019 was the date.
Okay.
I was up the street on 4th Avenue South.
It's 2020, not 2019.
I'm sorry, it's 2020.
Yeah.
I was doing outreach over South on 4th Avenue South when I got the news. And there started to be phone calls. So
how did the news come to you?
Actually, people were running around talking. We were trying to piece it together. Okay. And then, so it was basically, and then it was people running around, people were talking, but the organization that I was working with, they were already violence interrupters. So they had the walkies, they were kind of hearing what was happening. So it was kind of over walkie-talkies piecing together what happened. As I went back in to go and start to answer phone calls and turn on the news, that's when I figured out that George Floyd had been murdered.
What were your thoughts, your first thoughts, and your fears?
No, you know what? My first thought and my first thought was about George Floyd. I did not know. I cannot say that I knew him personally, but because of the work that I've done over the last 25 years, you meet people. You live in the neighborhood. I've lived in North Minneapolis. I lived in South Minneapolis. You meet people in passing in different capacities. I cried because I knew this name. Mm-hmm. I knew this person as more than someone was murdered. Mm-hmm. I knew him. So I cried. There was nothing else I could do. I couldn't answer any more phone calls. Everything went to voicemail and I cried. And then when I turned back on the news to see what I saw, to witness a murder for 9 minutes, over and over and over. That was a trauma on top of a trauma. Because I don't understand how, you can watch this and then now say, I don't understand how that happened. Everyone watched for hours. If you add up the 9 minutes and how many times that video has been played in its entirety, I have never seen a murder happen on TV like that, where it is just. So I cried. There was nothing else that I could do but cry. The officers involved, again, because I do outreach, I've seen these people. I've seen these people. I've seen how it goes. It was sadness. And then, after that, the thought was, what is about to happen to our community? Because we can't let this happen. So I'm going to say, with all honesty, I was ready for whatever the community was going to do. And that's in all honesty. What are we about to do?
Got it. My friend, Colonel David Rabb has joined us. Colonel Rabb, thank you for jumping on. And I don't know if you've heard most of this conversation or not, but reflecting on three things. One, I started off, David, by remembering that yesterday was the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And I said, kind of in summary, that I've had three kind of encounters with him directly. One, when I was maybe 14 years old, attending the NAACP National Convention as part of the youth delegation from Kansas City, Missouri, where I grew up. And he was one of the ones addressing the NAACP convention. And what was unique about that was that the convention set out pickets to protest the refusal of the main hotels downtown to accommodate us. And when that protest happened, as our people were protesting with picket signs, robed Klansmen were also protesting, and also members of the Nazi Party, U.S. Nazis were there. That was incident one. Incident two is when I was a freshman at Morehouse 5 years later. I was part of a protest out of the Morehouse and Atlanta University Center, marching to the state capitol, where Dr. King spoke in support of Julian Bond, who had been refused his seat by the state legislature because he supported SNCC and SNCC's position against the war in Vietnam. And I said the final contact I had with him directly was when I was at that time, a year later or so, in the Navy on active duty. Wow. And coming from Jacksonville back to Minnesota in early April, and I saw this solitary figure standing with a jacket, or not a jacket, but a trench coat draped over his arm, elegant. And it was Dr. King. I went and spoke to him. Long and short is, he said, go in peace, my son. I went in peace to Worthington, Minnesota. He went to die in Memphis. That was a day or two before he went to his own murder. And so that's what I reflected on. But what are your thoughts on this conversation? We tried to link that to also the generational experiences we have, because that experience of his murder, his assassination, resonates with the global impact and experience of the witness of the murder of George Floyd, and it reflects something about this system, the entire process. What are your thoughts, David Rapp?
My thoughts is this says something. All right, this says something, and we'll leave it up to you to figure out what does all this say, because it's really speaking to us. Um, Thank you for allowing me to be here. I When I think of Dr. King, I think of South Side Chicago. I'm about maybe 4, 5 years old. One of my first memories was my dad was uh, he was lifting me on his shoulders, and there were all these people, and there was a lot of fanfare and but protests. But for me, it was the largeness of the day, in terms of what was there, and me being on my dad's shoulders, trying to get a better glimpse at, what is this going on. But being on my dad's shoulders so I could see, that's a moment for me. Martin Luther King.
Let me sit on that for a second. I'm just appreciating the characterization of you on your dad's shoulders. That in itself says a lot about everything in terms of continuity, legacy, lineage, and everything. But on your dad's shoulders, standing on your dad's shoulders to get a
Oh,
glimpse of the entire thing. But go ahead.
yeah, I
Yeah.
never thought of it like that. That's why you are such a brilliant guy. um, the other is Julian Bond. You brought up Julian Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I When I was in college at Illinois State University, I was the president of the Black Student Union, and I was uh, able to introduce Julian Bond
Mm-hmm.
to the audience, right? But I got to meet him. Actually, I had to, drive him to the airport here in Minnesota. Well, actually in Illinois State, and it was nice to see the private side of who he was,
Mm-hmm.
or those moments and that space that I had the privilege of being. But I again, it was he came in, he gave his presentation, and he engaged with the students. The students had. They had all types of questions for him. And so I think of Julian Bond that way. Also, my sister got a chance to meet with him, and she just loved this guy. And I'm like, well, okay, well, Julian Bond is Julian Bond, but he's not all of that.
Uh,
But he was a very handsome, attractive guy, and had uh, a lot of uh, politically, he was very astute. And then you confront the George Floyd situation. My thing is, in my timeline, I was there the day after George Floyd got killed. Right? I mean, I couldn't go to sleep. So what did I do? I uh, I uh, I get up and I go there, and I have some photos I would love to share with you, because that's what I did. I took photos. And the reason why I took photos was because uh, it was larger than I could explain. Pictures are what, 1,000 words. So
that's right.
there's the brother who lives, who was, and I'm keep on. He was the in Minnesota, um, and he was the guy who historian, artist. Come on, help me now. African. They just so they named a school after him over
Gordon
last
Parks,
night.
not Gordon
Yes,
Parks.
Gordon Parks.
Mhm.
Gordon, I got a chance to think about what Gordon Parks did was he because he couldn't say it all, he said more by taking photos and
Yeah,
pictures and stuff like that. And so
yeah,
that's what I tried to do. I tried to capture the day in photos with as it relates to George Floyd. And I'm glad that I did because I got some really good scenes um, uh, that with the police department and the friction. And I got in spaces that I shouldn't have been. No, I should have been there because it's part of my community. That's
that's
the
right.
reason. It was like
That's
this is my community, South
right.
Minneapolis. Y'all ain't coming up in here and just And so what I intentionally went there to create cognitive dissonance,
Mm,
right? As a psychologist, psychiatrist, cognitive dissonance is like you got to take a second, you have to take a second look, right? Because I came in uniform, you know, um, and I'm thinking, okay, I had my hat on and some other military paraphernalia that indicated that I was also a veteran,
mhm,
right? And y'all can do this, but let you know that there are Black people who are in the military or veterans and families that are linked that is also part of your community.
mhm,
And what impacts one of us impacts all of us,
mhm,
right? It impacts all of us. And so George Floyd's, his death was terrible. I'm glad someone said, the it kept repeating, getting deeper and deeper into our consciousness. I think I saw it, the scene there, at least 20 times, 20
mhm,
times, right?
mhm,
Trying to make sense of the unsensible, trying to say, no, this is too close to home,
mhm,
right? And so it was eye-opening. But I I'm glad that we went through that process because it's for me all a process, right? Hopefully we can create something better.
mhm,
Somebody once, you said it. I think that when you know better, you do better. It's like we saw it, and now the media is getting. What's interesting to me is that the media is now finally trying to partner um, with the communities of color. And in the past, that was not there. I mean, we
mhm,
were going through the shit, and media did not cover, as you know, Al. It didn't. It was very lopsided, one way. It still is today,
mhm,
but it
mhm,
was, it crystallized after George Floyd. People saying, "Well, guess what? It's on film. It's you can't it's anyhow. That's my recollection of that having to deal with Martin Luther King, Julian Bond, and George Floyd.
Thanks, Michelle, for your note. Thank you, Terry Smith, for your note. Michelle says, Mr. Rab, you're definitely on point. Thank you. And Ms. Hurd for sharing your amazing experiences. Terry, thank you for saying you love the conversation and the different perspectives from people from the community is refreshing. Well, we're at the end of this hour, but it's been a wonderful hour. It's always good to be with you, wherever you are in social media, on social platforms. We want to broaden the circle, broaden our engagement, our connection with you and to you. We invite you to support this program, this conversation by going to the YouTube Insight News MN channel and becoming a subscriber and tell everybody you know. everybody you know to subscribe and to like and to share. We're over 600 subscribers presently. We want to get to 1,000. We're halfway there, and we need you to be a part of this conversation. We think that being together is what it's all about. Let's spend time together and let's share our stories. Every story is important. And so I want to continue this conversation, maybe even next week. Brother David, maybe you would bring the photographs and walk us through that day. Just take us to a slideshow of your work and do this in a way that invites community to also go to their Facebook pages and their photographs. I think a lot of people caught the same spirit, the spirit of our elder brother Gordon Parks. That spirit descended on many of us, right? Instructing us to go capture this moment. Go without fear, capture the moment, document. Well, if you have been documenting things in our community, we'd love to be sharing of that with each other. So with that, we're going to close today. Brother David, thank you. Sister Tanane, thank you so much. And those who are listening, thank you all. We'll see you next time. Take care.